I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in October 2004. Well, first, oh my gosh, why me? But then, and also I used to be terrified of injections, so that whole thing just scared me completely.
All of a sudden I had a feeling that I needed to watch her more, I had to keep her more in my care, but that wasn't going to be realistic. But it had a added scariness of saying, oh my gosh, I have an adolescent, I have to let go, not knowing if she really knew how to handle herself in an unpredictable situation.
Firstly, I was quite self-conscious, like, oh, I don't really want to be taking injections in front of everyone, this is really embarrassing. Everyone's going to think I'm like shooting up in the middle of a lunchroom.
In many ways, she handled it a lot better than I did, because as a parent, I think you just think you want to do whatever you can for your children and you want to be able to fix it. And that just wasn't going to be something I was going to be able to do.
If I didn't medicate, that would be a very, very bad thing and not a wise idea. Basically, my blood sugars would go really, really high and I would start to feel dizzy, and if I then continued to not take insulin, I would get ill, probably throw up, and then eventually die.
It was very scary. It was probably one of the few things in my whole life that sort of have shaken me to my core. In addition to understanding the disease, and then the question is, what does it mean longer term? And you couldn't fix it. You couldn't take your treatments and in 2 or 3 years it would be over.
When you have type 1 diabetes, you have to consider and calculate the carbohydrates in your meal. So if I was to have a piece of toast, I'd be like, okay, that's 20 grams of carbohydrates. For me, I have 1 unit of insulin for every time I eat 20 grams of carbohydrates. That's kind of a foreign idea. I hadn't ever really considered food as something to be calculated. Sometimes school lunch can be a bit difficult because you don't really know what's in the strange sauces or the things that we don't really know what they actually are.
It was about working with it, and I could help Chandler, but at the end of the day it was something that she was going to have to own, and she was going to have to be motivated to do the blood sugar testing and really controlling and experimenting to see how foods worked with her body. And she just took that challenge on so admirably. I was sort of more in pieces and she was sort of moving forward to the next page.
At the beginning it is a bit tricky and you do make mistakes. You kind of have to expect that, I suppose. But in the long run, yeah, you kind of get into a pattern and it becomes habit and everything just becomes kind of second nature.
With her love of sport, her big question was, will they still allow me to compete in sports competitions? That blew me away because I wasn't even thinking about sports. I was thinking, what are we talking about?
It definitely does affect my sports. I have to check my blood sugars a lot more frequently when I'm playing sport, because the difficulty is the sports that I do quite competitive, like sprinting, and that's difficult because adrenaline in sport brings your blood sugars up quite rapidly. The key to it is monitoring everything.
She wanted to keep going with something that she loved, and she just didn't want diabetes to get into the way. I think that's what really got her on track after her diagnosis.
A few months after I was diagnosed, I moved on to the insulin pump, which I can show you. It's here, and it's like connected there. And yeah, this is a really good change for me. It definitely gives a lot more flexibility. It's kind of like a bigger injection, but like once every 3 days, and it pumps in the insulin throughout the day. You still have to calculate the carbohydrates in your food or whatnot and calculate how much you're going to put in. It's a lot of finer measurements. It kind of goes up in 0.1 of units, so you can have slightly tighter control. Sometimes I get like little red spots or whatever. So then when I'm going to like the beach or something, sometimes I kind of walk around like this, like, oh, I don't really like to wear bikinis or whatever. But I think I've also got over that. But at the beginning that was a bit of a nightmare. I think if you approach diabetes type 1 with a positive attitude and more of a kind of, I can do this, how will I do it? Instead of this is a nightmare, why did I get this? It definitely just becomes just a part of who you are.
I think it's almost given her a new sense of like power, like I can do things, I can overcome challenges, and this is my first one, there may be others ahead. So I think in some ways it's actually made her a stronger person, more confident, and not let anything hold her back. And as a mother, I'm really proud of her too.
Just kind of integrate it into your life, because everyone can control it. You just have to put in the effort, and it's really worth it in the end, because when it is controlled, you feel like you're kind of just like everyone else.